Hey everyone, welcome and thank you very much for taking the time. My name is Kai Burival. I'm a applications engineer here at Enscape, and today, over the course of the next 45 minutes, we're gonna have a look, a rather detailed look, a deep dive webinar into the topic of custom assets. So your own 3D models or 3D models that you get from an online source or from a 3D artist or from anywhere. How to work with this kind of 3D models, how to get them into your own custom asset library, where to find them, which kind of models you can use. We're going to cover a very, very useful 3D software called Blender. We're going to cover how you can tweak your models in there so they fit your requirements. We're going to discuss topics such as what is a polycount, what does it mean, materials, textures. We're going to export from Blender so you can get them into Enscape just right, create the actual custom asset. We're going to discuss what placeholder geometry is, how you can share your custom asset library with your team, with anyone, so to say. And in the end, we'll also have a look at a sort of bonus content. I'm going to show you how you can very easily create your own multi-purpose monitor custom asset, so you can, play your own movies or video clips in your Enscape visualizations very easily. So yeah, thank you very much. Lean back. This is a recorded webinar, so you're gonna get the recording afterwards, so you don't have to follow along the first time. You will have all the time to follow along whenever you want to, or share the webinar recording with anybody, of course. Yeah, and let's jump right in. So custom assets or 3D models. What kind of 3D models can we use and where can we find those? Enscape can import 3 separate file types as custom assets. Those are called FBX, OBJ, and GLTF. This doesn't have to ring a bell necessarily, but those are fairly standard industry exchange formats, file types. So wherever you get your custom assets, your 3D models, the chance is very high that you will be able to get your model in one of those 3 file types. Where can we find models if we don't know where to find them? So, and maybe, I'm starting very fast here. I want to highlight that this is not an Enscape introductory course, so I assume that you have some experience with Enscape and you're distinctively interested in the topic of 3D assets. So I assume that you will have at least some kind of 3D models in mind that may be missing from the Enscape Asset Library, or you didn't find the exact model that you're looking for in the Enscape Asset Library. I assume that you've checked the asset library before, because it would be a shame if you would have to go through the hassle of creating your own models, and later on you'll find that maybe there is a model that fits what you need just fine already in our library. So again, I assume that you at least have an idea what kind of 3D models you're searching for. Or maybe you already have a certain 3D model that you want to use in Enscape, but it's not in our included asset library, but rather you want to bring it into your own kind of library, or multiple models for that sake. However, if you don't know where to get your 3D model or a fitting 3D model, there is plenty of online sources out there. Oh, and by the way, I'm sorry, I'm jumping back and forth, but as you've seen, I'm presenting this webinar in SketchUp, but that's pretty much random. What I'm going to be showing applies to all of the supported design applications. So whatever, if you're working with Rhino or ArchiCAD, Vectorworks, or Revit, what I'm discussing here is going to work with all of these applications. So while I'm using SketchUp, you can be using any other design application, and it's going to work just fine. So there is plenty of online sources where you can get 3D models from. A lot of them paid, a lot of them free. One great web platform that I like to recommend to start with is called turbosquid.com. turbosquid.com. And here, there is a huge library on here. Actually, I'm not sure if we can find out how many models they have on this website, but it's thousands. So whatever you're searching for, and I'm just, wild guess, but that might be some certain type of tree or something like that, or anything that is very specific, just type it in the search bar here, and the chance for you to find just the right models for you very quickly is very, very high. However, if you just want to, get to know how to work with these models, a good start is definitely to click free 3D models on this website and, just have a look at what there is that you can get, that you can download. And let's see. Actually, I think for the sake of this presentation, I hope you don't mind, let's just assume you as a designer or an architect, you might have a music nerd as client, and they are a huge fan of Daft Punk, for example, and you want to include some Daft Punk helmets into the visualization. They're available here as a free model, so let's just go with those. Why try to recreate something if it is already available for free? So those look quite nice. Let's see what we can do with those. And as you see, as I mentioned, once again, the formats that are supported by Enscape are called FBX, OBJ, and GLTF. And already we have FBX and OBJ mentioned right here on the front page, essentially. So this is very useful information right here. And we could essentially use these right away. One more very important piece of information here is this, the poly count, or the amount of polygons or faces we have for this model. And those in this case are 57,000 and 58,000. Doesn't look like it, but we see already right here, there is quite a lot of fine detail there. So if you have experienced with, or if you've experimented with custom models in Enscape in the past, you might have run across a warning message, and we're going to see that later on, telling you that maybe a model has more than 20,000 polygons. And because of that, there is, let's say, additional caution required, essentially. However, this is not a cap. A lot of people think that that is the maximum of polygons that can be used, but that is not true. So we're gonna cover that, but I want to go specifically with these 3D models that are larger than the 20,000 polygons that Enscape itself recommends. So we can see this this error or this warning message, and we can discuss what that means for you. By the way, shout out or highlight to Dennis Gomez, who has made these models. So that looks like a great model. So let's click download. If you don't have an account on TurboSquid yet, you're gonna have to create your own account. If you just give us, or just give them your email address, confirm it, and you'll be able to download these free models. And right here we see, okay, we can download this in OBJ, we can download this in .blend file. So that already hints at the software called Blender that we're going to use to edit or fine-tune these assets. And we have FBX. Which one of the supported formats, OBJ, FBX, or GLTF, which one of those you use, that's pretty much up to you. I personally prefer FBX, but any of those will work the same. They have slightly different behaviors in certain specifics. But I would say maybe FBX and GLTF. GLTF is the newest format of the three, should perform the best. So I'm just going to click on the FBX version here, and we see it's already downloaded my FBX model. So let's check out my downloads page and see if it's downloaded just fine. And also, parallelly, I want to make sure that I have Blender installed. So while we could just jump in and say, this is just, a preview, just a small digression. But we could already say we skip the whole Blender part. We open the Custom Asset Editor that Enscape provides, and we're gonna once again do that one more time, more slowly. Just want to show you that you could just, open the Custom Asset Editor, import geometry, go to the downloads page, and just import this model as it is. And it doesn't even give me the information that it's more than 20,000 polygons, which is fine. We see that there is some transparency, or something is going on with this right helmet that is very interesting. And we see, and this is something that is probably going to happen to you more than once, at least it happens to me all the time. I am navigating in this preview window we have here, but it's very, very slow. And we're going to have another look at that, or let's check it out right now, because I'm gonna show you how to work around that later on. But it feels very slow navigating in this preview window. I'm pressing Control, Shift, and the S or W key, and still I'm moving really slow. The reason for that is, well, these helmets are imported with 414 meters of width, 186 meters of height. So we already know there is something wrong with this particular model, or at least, it's being interpreted the wrong way by Enscape in this case. And we want to discuss how to improve these things. Both the transparency, the weird transparency of this right helmet, and the scale. So to do that, we could change the scale right up here, but that would be too easy. So let's close Enscape and SketchUp for now and open Blender. If you've never heard of Blender, if you don't know what that is, you can visit blender.org and download it for free. Right here, it's an amazing software. It's a full-fledged 3D package, so it's very complex, lots of functionalities in there, but it's also very sleek, very quick to download, free. So you can absolutely use it also just to edit your assets and make them perform right, which is what we're gonna do right now. So let me just enter Blender. It opens on my second screen over here. And it's opened with this basic sample scene with a cube in it, the default cube. I'm just going to delete the cube, selected it, pressed delete, and that's that. And I'm going to go to the top left here, click File, Import, FBX, because that's the format that we've downloaded our model in. And let's go to Downloads and Daft Punk Helmets. So this is what they look like in here. The errors we've seen before, we don't see any of those right now. We can check out how many polygons those are. I could show you, or I can show you how. But we know it's around 60,000 polygons per helmet. And if we switch to the wireframe view up here, we can see a little bit why, because there is a lot of smooth parts where there is a lot of geometry there. So that's all right for me right now. And since we haven't seen this information that Enscape sometimes brings up when you import a model that has more than 20,000 polygons, polygons. If you're confused, polygons are just these faces, these individual planes that we have here, and the more detail or the more rounder essentially the shapes are that you want to put into a model, the more of these polygons you'll usually need, or you will use textures to apply that detail. But anyways, this warning message that Enscape oftentimes brings up regarding a maximum of 20,000 polygons, well, that's a warning message regarding the fact that usually you will bring in a model, a custom asset into Enscape that you don't want to place just once in your scene, but probably a lot of times. Things like trees, bushes, people, cars, whatever. Usually you don't just place them once, you want to place them a lot of times, and you afterwards still want Enscape to perform properly, to give you a good frame rate, to work on, not even on lesser or less strong graphics cards. So that's what that information is for. If you bring in a model that is larger than 20,000 polygons, the assets that are provided by our 3D artists in the Enscape Asset Library, they're usually less than 20,000 polygons, so you can place them a lot of times and not worry about it. If you have a model that you want to bring into Enscape as a custom asset just once or twice or 5 times or whatever, you can go higher than 20,000 polygons. You can go with 100,000, 200, 800,000 polygons, and it will still work. There is no maximum cap, but of course, depending on your hardware, depending on the overall scale complexity of your model, it is possible that if you bring in a model that has 800,000 polygons, that, it will lead to performance issues. So that's what that warning message is for. In this case, we have 2 models, each of those 60,000 polygons, so we'll have around 120,000 polygons in total. I will still bring this into Enscape. It's going to be easy for me because my scene is empty anyways. But like if it's a highlight model, if it's something that is important for the scene, it's absolutely fine to bring in something that is larger than 20,000 polygons. However, also keep in mind, is it going to be big? Is it going to be visible? Or are you looking for a model that is going to be visible somewhere tiny in the distance or something like that? In that case, you don't need that amount of polygons. And we are going to have a look at how you can reduce the amount of polygons for a given model in a second or in a couple of minutes. First of all, let's talk a little bit about materials, because it appears that there are no materials applied to these models. We can check this down here. We have fairly the same material for all of these objects. We can quickly, let me just delete my cameras, I don't need those. We can just go through these objects here and check if there are any specific materials on there. There aren't. Everything is white and shiny. So I do really not care about materials in Blender right here, because I'm gonna improve the materials in Enscape, in the Custom Asset Editor anyways. However, I want to do something in Blender already, namely I want to assign certain materials. Because while we can edit materials in the Enscape asset, in the Enscape Custom Asset Editor, we can edit given materials there, we cannot create new materials, and we cannot assign them to geometry. So if you have a model where the materials are not applied correctly yet, you want to do that in Blender before bringing it into Enscape. And I like to do that with really strong colors, because once again, this has nothing to do with how they're gonna look later in Enscape. For me right now, it's just to, to be able to distinguish those materials easily. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select every single part here, every single object. Let's say the cylinder. I'm going to apply new material. Do I want to call those here? No. If I knew exactly what the result would be, I would probably make sure they're named properly right away. But right now, I just want to create a new material, apply a distinctive color, and go on to the next one. So that's cylinder 1. Cylinder 2 has material 2. Yeah, let's see. Let's just make this, for example, red, something we don't have before. Glass. This is material 1 again. No, it's a different material 1. So let's see. Let's just make this green. Okay, so this is our overall material that is applied to pretty much everything else. However, this part of the model is called glass. So that's great because this allows us to show you in Blender how to create and how to assign new materials. How to do that? Well, again, this is material 001, so I don't want to use that for this glass helmet. Instead, let's create a new material by clicking on this plus icon here. Click new and call that glass. And now all I have to do is select the geometry that I want. And by the way, and this is going quite deep into Blender, but I can press tab and that will allow me to edit the individual elements of the model. So, I can just have a selection here and I can say I have the selection, selected here on the model. I have the right material selected, so I can press assign. And that's gonna assign this particular material not to the whole object, but just to the portion that was selected. I can press tab again to go, I'm toggling between object and edit mode. That's that. Or I can, select the right material and can I press assign? No, I cannot press assign. So I need to be in edit mode, and I can select all by simply pressing A, press assign. Or let's undo that. I could, because here you see the materials that are applied to this object, not this helmet, but this particular glass visor, the thing that is highlighted in orange here. So I could also just say I throw out the other material, and that will make sure that this is the only material, or the only material applied to this part of the geometry. So that's fine. Still want to give it a distinctive color, nothing to do with what it's going to look like later. It's just for me to, easily see where I've already worked on the material and where not. Oh, okay, so there's another glass part. We don't want this to be the same glass we had before, so I'm gonna remove the material with the minus here, add the material with a plus, click new to create a new material and call that glass 2. Give it a distinctive color just to make sure I know which ones I've worked on already. Let's go to the next one. Helmet. So that's the overall material right here. Let's see. Material 01, we want to remove that, create a new one, call it new. Why am I removing the existing material on there? Just to recap, because I want to make sure that later on when I bring this model into the Enscape Custom Asset Library, that I can edit each one of those materials individually in the Custom Asset Editor. That's really important for me because I want to have the ability. Right now, I'm assigning these materials and I'm going to edit them later on when bringing the custom asset into the Custom Asset Editor or library. So yeah, what are we going to call this material? Let's stick with material 04 because honestly, I don't know what it's going to look like exactly later on. Let's make it blue, just so we have a distinctive color, so we know we've already worked on that. Next one, that's the second helmet. I could leave this on material 001. Actually, I'm gonna do that. No particular reason. There's a light here, I'm gonna delete that, another light, and wires. The wires right here that are that have so much detail on it. So there's so many polygons there, so many faces. We want those to have their own distinctive material. Right now they have none. So let's click plus. Let's, just create a material called wires. And let's make it pink. Or no, wait, we have pink already. I don't want any confusion, so let's go with turquoise or something like that. Okay, that's that. Actually, just to double down on the point that we had earlier, we know that this the right helmet here is one coherent model. Just to show you that it can be done, essentially. And I don't want to go into too detailed into how the selection or how tips and tricks on selection work in Blender, but let me just select a certain portion of this helmet on both sides, like this. I'm gonna extend my selection. Just, to show you how this can be done. Ooh, why did one disappear? Sorry, I probably didn't hold the right... Control Z, hold the right key down. So want to make sure it's selected on both sides. Extend the selection. Something like this. Just to show you that you can also apply materials on individual parts of a consistent model. And we're gonna, create a new material. I'm gonna call this material ears, because I don't know, this looks like ears to me. Enter, and let's give it a last. Let's make it orange. Oh, I unselected before assigning the material, so I'm gonna hold Control Z to undo that, assign. And now we have this portion of this consistent model also with its own specific material. Once again, it's not about the look of those materials at all yet. This is just to assign them and be able to work on them later on. So let's see if I forgot something. No, I think that's fine. So we want to export from Blender into Enscape, and we also want to remove a couple of issues, because if you remember, we had the scaling issues. In Enscape, our helmets were a couple of hundreds of meters in scale. We're going to tackle that once we export the model. But we first of all want to tackle the weird transparency we have in on this right helmet. How does that happen? And it's something that you're going to run into when working with custom models quite a bit. Let's see if I can find right away face orientation. So on the left, the faces. So face orientation means in 3D, in CGI, any surface has a right or an outward side and an inward side. And in Enscape, by default, you can select that it's a double-sided surface or material. But by default, if you look at a model from the wrong side, it's going to be transparent. And that's what happens on this right helmet here. I've just changed the display type here in Blender. You can do it by clicking up here and then selecting face orientation. And if something shows up in blue, it's oriented the right way towards you. And if something shows up in red, it's oriented, well, into the other direction. So you see the interior of this helmet appears blue. So that's the side we see in Enscape. We want to change that. We want to invert that. How does this happen? This happens a lot when a model is being created and it's being mirrored. You have something, you mirror it, it's gonna essentially turn inside out in the process. So you have to go in later on, and how do we do that? We select all the surfaces. Yeah, all the surfaces except for the ones that are blue. So let's see. Let's see if I can improve that quickly here. Sorry. These are really high poly. Let's see if I can think of it. Yeah, let me think of a quick way to select all of those. This is really dirty, of course. Ideally, you will take a little more time to clean things up if you want to, but I'm just gonna increase. Oh, it's its own model. This particular ear part. So that's great. That's awesome. That means I just have to select essentially like this one coherent model. Increase the selection. That's what I'm doing here. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. This one too, and this one. Increase the selection. And since it's not connected to that blue ear part, we're doing just fine. So now I right click, and it's been a while that I did this. I apologize if there is a delay. I want to, is it mesh? I want to normals, flip. One more time, so you see it, mesh, normals, flip. It's gonna flip the normals of each surface. It's gonna essentially mirror every surface. So now most part of our helmet is blue. It's nice. This one looks purple, but I don't mind. It's still this glass face and the other one as well. I'm gonna do the same thing. I switch to edit mode from object mode to edit mode. Mesh. Oh, select all, just pressing A. Mesh, normals, flip. And the other one as well. Edit mode. I could just press Alt N, flip. And now, as you see, the inside is on the inside, just as we want it, and the outside is on the outside. So those models will perform well in Enscape as well. I'm gonna get rid of my face orientation view. And now we're ready to export. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure everything that I want to export is selected. We can see that here in the outliner. I'm gonna go to File, Export. I'm gonna export to FBX, so we stay in the same format. It's not really important, but again, I just like to be in FBX, or I just like the FBX format. So now we have an overview here. I'm gonna export to my desktop. Let's call this Daft Punk Helmets right away. And one thing, as you've seen, the helmets were really big when we imported them into Enscape. That is always going to be the case, or that's always the case when I work with Blender. Bring it into Enscape. It's always 100 times the scale. So what I do is right here in the transform settings, I'm setting the scale to 0.01. Let's see if there's anything else. Limit to selected objects. We've deleted everything else, but it's a good measure if you just want to export one single object to click selected objects, or yeah, selected objects. So any cameras or whatever might be flying around in your scene otherwise is not included. And we can leave everything else as it is. So I'm just going to press Export FBX, and we can shut down Blender. I'm just checking if the recording is working, so I'm not doing all of this in vain. That looks beautiful. All right. So it's about time to go into Enscape and the Enscape Custom Asset Editor. Here is the asset library. Don't worry, I'm not sure why my info box here appears black right now. It's probably because I'm recording something. Enscape Asset Library, and here is your regular Enscape assets, and then you have the custom assets. Custom assets, if you open this for the first time, Enscape is going to ask you to select two folders. One of them is going to be the folder where your Enscape asset project files are being stored. And it's going to ask you for a second folder where your finished Enscape assets are going to be saved. If you've done that already, that's the folder that you can see when hovering over this folder icon at the bottom right. This is important. Please make sure you're not selecting the same folder for both. Just choose, 2 folders that you create just for that occasion when you do that for the first time. If you've done so already, great. We're ready to create a new asset from the Custom Asset Editor. And I think I was briefly thinking to create one asset for each helmet, but I'm just going to stick with both of them as one asset. So I'm just going to press this plus icon here, and that's going to open the Custom Asset Editor, which allows us to take any of the models in FBX, OBJ, GLTF format and bring them into our personal custom asset library. So we can start with just clicking this import geometry button up here. Just gonna go to my desktop, select my Daft Punk helmets, and now we see right away up here, okay, it's still quite large, like, each one of those helmets is almost 2 meters tall, but we can change that in our project. We could change it right here as well. So what is a regular head size? It's probably gonna be something like 0.35, something like that, and it's going to adapt the changes to all dimensions at once. So now when we move around, it's way more realistic. By the way, if you are in this custom asset editor and you don't see your model, or it's somewhere and you cannot find it, you have the numpad on your keyboard. That's the numpad keys, and you can press each one of those to teleport to bring yourself directly to the model. For example, press 5 to view your model from the top, and that's gonna center around your assets, around your models in the Enscape preview here. And once again, if you try to navigate in this preview and it doesn't seem to work, check the scaling up here, because it's very likely that that the scaling is kind of off and your model is probably bigger than you thought. All right, Enscape has already filled in the description or the title of our asset. We could select a category here, but right now I'm just going to leave it as it is. We're going to do that later. We could fill in a description, but we don't have to. I think, by the way, this might be a full hour webinar. I hope you have the time. I'll try to make it worthwhile. So yeah, now what I like to do. By the way, also one more thing: if your model is oriented somehow wrongly, you might just want to change the up axis. We can do that when exporting from Blender, or we can do it directly here. If you imported your model directly and it looks, looking to the side or looking to the back or something, just change the up axis here, and it should perform well. Now, what we want to do is work on those individual materials that we have here. So one of them, by the way, double-sided, that would have been the solution, the quick and simple solution to our transparency issues earlier. We probably usually want to go with a metallic material in this case. This is no course on materials, so I'm just going to be very quick with this one. Obviously, we don't want to stick with the materials we had before. We don't want them to look that way. One more thing, by the way, this preview for this custom asset editor happens in a white space, as you see. So if you make something reflective, it's sometimes hard to guess the reflectivity of it. Just, I assume you have some experience with the Enscape materials. Just trust your experience there. The glass, not going to be metallic, but it's going to be reflective. Let's make it black. Let's make it very reflective, very smooth. Oh yeah, it looks tasty. It looks interesting. Glass number 2. Let's change that a little bit. It's still going to be reflective. This is a very, very reflective model. Let's make it somewhat brighter. And, you know, I really like this, even if I have materials that are already quite, you know, established in your existing model, something like that. I like to go through each and every one of them and make sure they look the right way inside of Enscape, to make sure, you know, they work as they're supposed to. Actually, glass 2, I changed my mind. I don't want this to be just reflective. I want this to be self-illuminated. So it's gonna glow and emit some light there. It's gonna be a nice little effect. That's the green one, and you see why I've applied these distinctive colors, because if we didn't name those materials properly, I can now very easily recognize which material is which and which I'm gonna work on next. This one is gonna be metallic again, relatively rough, and we want to add a bump map this time. I actually didn't prepare a bump map, so I'm just gonna see if I have something downloaded already. If not, you know, if you've seen one of my webinars before, you may know ambientcg.com. Great source with free textures on. And I'm just gonna pick something here. Maybe this metal. I'm just gonna download it very quickly. Did I just download it 3 times? Oh yeah, I did. I'm gonna use, you don't see it, let me just bring it over here. I'm just gonna use the displacement texture for this one. I really want this to be, just want to use this irregularity here. Let's go back to the Enscape Asset Editor and desktop. That's this one. Make sure it has the appropriate size. Just checking. It's gonna look like, you know. Now there is one more topic that we could cover, which is UV textures or UV layout. And it looks to me like this part of this model, if we check out those UVs, that's essentially, you know, how 2D textures are being applied to the model. And as you see, those are not perfectly done here, it appears. Or at least they don't follow the shape of the model very nicely. If you have something like that, it's at least worth a try in Blender. If you go to UV editing, go to UV, and try something like Smart UV Project. And this is gonna, you know, as you see, it's gonna do its best to automatically lay out, like a piece of paper craft, essentially. Lay out the UVs, so the 2D texture connection on your model. Again, you don't need to perfectly understand what all of that means, but right now our 2D texture didn't have a nice effect. I went into UV editing, you made sure all of those faces are selected. UV, Smart UV Project, it's a nice guess, and it appears it has given me a better result than what I had before. So actually, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna select all of these objects again. I'm gonna export them again as FBX to the same file, or you know what, let's make it helmets 2, selected objects 0.01, so you know, the same settings like we had them before. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna import the geometry again, but this time Daft Punk helmets 2. And what Enscape does is it realizes that the materials are the same in this new model. So do we want to keep the work that we've put into those materials? Yes. I want to keep the existing materials, but now, as you see, it works quite well. We have this texture now applied, and it works as it's supposed to be. So, this being said, I'm gonna make it a little less extreme. I'm also gonna make it a little smaller now that we see it. What is that like? And look at this. This is what I want to see. Like, yeah, we've made the UVs on the model work, and it gives us the proper effect of this texture. So let's, make it quick. Let's keep this. Why not keep this green? This one, we can keep that red. Let's make it metallic. Let's make it reflective. This one is going to stay like that because it's... No, wait a minute. That's a different black material, is it? Let's just check what material is what by simply changing the color, but I think it's this screen there, is it? I'm sorry, 1 second. What material... Oh. What material is this exactly? It's I can... Oh, it's the small one. Okay, sorry, gotcha. So, not bother with that at all. The other one, let's make this just as reflective, but not metallic this time. Are we going to keep it blue? Yes, why not? Let's go with a more subtle blue, though, so it's not looking so awful. It still looks awful. I'm sorry, Daft Punk, if you're watching. Didn't do your helmets justice. They look way better in real life. Anyways, this is just a demonstration. And the wires, lastly. Let's make those black and not bother with those anymore at all. So, now that we have our asset so far done, looks good to me. The scale is right. The up axis is right. The materials have been worked on. I'm going to create a thumbnail. That's necessary for us to, create the actual asset. And now we have two options. We can just save this as it is and keep it as an asset. And what Enscape is going to do is, you need a placeholder geometry. Enscape by default will create a box, a bounding box that spans around these two models. And that's how it's going to be represented in your design application, in SketchUp, in Revit, etc. That is one way to do it. If you don't care how it looks in your design application, the box is the simplest way. The other option would be to load in our own placeholder geometry. Now, to load in our own placeholder geometry, you need a model. We could say, for the placeholder geometry, let's just go with this same model. But we have 120,000 polygons in there. And while that is enough for Enscape, if you place it, less than 10 times or something like that, it's not going to be okay for your design application. It's not going to perform well in SketchUp or Revit or something if you load a model as placeholder geometry, because that's the model that's going to show up in your design application. And the model that shows up in Enscape is a different one. So that's going to drag down the performance of your design application, of your, the place where you work, essentially. And you don't want that. So you want to make sure the placeholder geometry, you want to make sure you either go with a box, which is being created by Enscape automatically, or you go with a really, really, really simple model to maintain performance in your native design application. How can we do that? There are two ways we can go by. One of them is to simplify the models we have. Once again, those are 120,000 polygons right now. So I don't care about the detail in my design application. So one thing that I'm going to go is I'll select those and delete it. I'm going to select pretty much everything that, that's not important for the overall shape and just get rid of it. So let's see. Do I want to keep those ears? I think I do. However, a lot of polygons right there still. Let me actually enable... Give me a second. Again, it's been a while that I've been directly in Blender. Yeah, wireframe. I want to enable the wireframe so we can see the complexity the entire time. And now we want to simplify things. How can we do that? Watch closely. but again, you'll get the recording, so you can watch it afterwards anyways. But if we have a model with too many polygons and we want to make it simpler, we're gonna click this button to add a modifier, select a modifier, and we want to go with a decimate modifier. And here the ratio right now is 100%. We want to be daring and say we want 10%. And this is the result we get for this face shield. Let's do the same thing with this, decimate 0.1. And you see, this may lead to errors on your model. It's not going to be, you know, as pretty anymore. But this is meant for our representation in your design application. So this is not meant to be visibly pleasing. This is just going to be your placeholder geometry. Okay, same thing on the left side. Actually, this one goes fine. This one, add modifier, decimate 0.1. And the same thing with the ears. I can just do it for one model at a time. So 0.1. And you know this one, I'm just going to delete it. I don't need it. All right, this is looking good. And if we want to see how many polygons do we have now, once again, it was around 120,000 before. Now it's 7,000. And that's going to perform well in your design application. So with that being done, File, Export, FBX, same procedure as before, but we call it differently. We'll call it placeholder. Same thing, make sure the scale is the same we had before. Export FBX, and now we can say placeholder geometry, and we'll load in our Daft Punk helmets placeholder, and we don't see it by default, but we can enable show in preview, and it's gonna show us this simplified placeholder geometry. And voila, this is looking good. This is looking great. So let's go back, and we are finished with this asset. So save changes and export, and that's gonna include it into our asset library, and there it is. Let's open Enscape before we bring it in so we can, you know, see it in its full glory. Actually, I'm just gonna bring it in through Enscape to celebrate it. So here's my empty scene. I can press L to open the Enscape Asset Library, select my Daft Punk helmets, and what you're gonna see now, and I realized one thing, I'm gonna come to that in a second, but what you see now, these white shapes, those are our placeholders. That's the simplified model. I'm going to move them up a bit. And now once we hit apply changes, let's see what they look like in the wild. Essentially, is my face shield glowing? No, it's not. Oh, I should have changed the brightness of the emissive material. We're gonna still do that in a second. But yeah, those are our assets all cleaned up, looking great with some nice materials on them, just working well. One more thing, you've seen them being half in the floor. That's because our scene origin, as you see it here, is already at the bottom, so it really pays off before bringing the asset into the asset library to position them correctly in Blender so they're, well, above the ground, essentially, not right in the ground, because that's gonna make it easier for you to bring them into the scene every single time. Right now, let me just edit this asset one more time. I can do that straight through Enscape, as you see. Just clicking this edit button there. There we go. And what did we... Oh yeah, the emissive material. So I think that's this one. Yeah, exactly. Let's just make it a lot brighter. It was 5,000 candelas. Now it's 100,000. Save changes. Export. It's probably too bright. We should have been a little more... Wait a minute. Where's my emissive material? Did I apply it somehow the wrong way? Let me check it one more time. If not, like, we have just 5 minutes left. I'm sure you're looking at the clock already. So I still have promised you this multi-purpose monitor screen. So let me just check this really briefly. What's wrong here? Let me change the... okay, no, sorry, because, yeah... Because the emission color was black, so it can be as bright as you want. It's not gonna illuminate anyways. So change the color to red. Let's see. Already updated, and now it also glows really nicely. So yeah, I'm quite satisfied with my result, but then again, this is a free model. You can do just the same thing, and I'm sure you can come up with a lot nicer color variations than I did right now. Let me just check if I have covered everything else essentially that I want. One more really useful thing. At some point, like I have, you may have created your own custom asset library with a bunch of these. Let me just go to the design application version again. You can, of course, categorize your models. To do that, you can open this, the list view, as I call it, of the custom asset editor, add a new category. I'm just going to call this the Daft Punk category. You know, add them here so you can find them easier later on. At some point you have your custom asset library with all your working models. They're looking great. You have them categorized and everything. How can you share that with the rest of your team, with colleagues, or, you know, with anyone you want to share your models with? Well, simple. We need to wait because it's saving. We're going to be there in a second. Simple. This folder that we've set up in the very beginning, that you see the bottom right here. Just let's wait for it to finish saving. The folder with your finished assets in there. In my case, that's my documents, custom assets. So this is what that folder looks like. You know, we've set it up down here in the bottom right corner. I hope you see it. And if you hover over it with your mouse, you can see where it is. And there we go. You can just grab this whole folder, zip it to a zip file, send it to your colleagues, to your team members. They unzip it on their machine. They link using this button down here in the bottom right corner, this folder icon. They link it to that same folder, and they'll have the same assets all ready to be used that you've created. And, you know, spread the joy. That's how easy it is. So, last but not least, how can I create a very easy multi-purpose screen or monitor to show my videos on in Blender? And I'm just going to go with a new scene here. Really simple. Shift and A is the shortcut to create, to add new geometry. I'm just going to create a plane. And while doing that, I want to make sure it has the right dimensions for my movie, for my video that I want to show. And that's probably going to be full HD is 1920 times 1080. So I'm just going to say 1.92. Yeah, that's not the right one. So this one times 1.08, 1920 times 1080, as you see there. If you're thinking about the UV textures, this is now a square still, the 2D texture information, but, you know, the video that you're going to apply will be squeezed to the scale anyways and then stretched again, so it's going to fit. We're just going to take it as it is, simple plane, have it selected, export as FBX. Let's go, this is important, 0.01 in scale. And let's go to my desktop, multi-purpose screen. Export FBX. Let's go back to the Enscape Custom Asset Editor. Last seconds. Let's create a new asset. Let's wait for it to load on my second screen. All right. Let's call, no, actually I can import the geometry and it's going to fill the title automatically. So multi-purpose screen. Let's see where it is. Actually, I can just change the material here to make sure I can see it better. Let's go pressing 5 on my numpad. And right now it's lying around. So, you know, it's currently looking upwards. So I'm going to change the up axis. Let's see what that looks like. Also, don't be confused because, again, we have one side where it's visible and one side where it's not. So don't be confused by that. It might be invisible from certain angles. I think this works. So now what I'm going to do is, instead of this red material, I'm just going to select a video that I have. It's probably a little big with 150 megabytes. Let's see. I'm just going to select a video. This can be any video format. You know, if you have something like a trailer for your company, something you've produced or something like that, just select that video. It is inverted. I was afraid. Like, of course, you can take your time and rotate it in Blender more easily. But, you know, let me just create the thumbnail. Let's save and export. Save changes and export. And we can place it in the scene straight away. So, where is it? Our new screen, our multi-purpose, there it is. So let's just place this, you know, somewhere in the scene. And of course, this becomes a regular object in your design application. So let's reopen Enscape. Where is my Enscape window? There it is. Of course. Again, just visible from one side. Of course, you can make an object with a certain depth to it. I just wanted, and you know, then it's going to be visible from all sides. I just wanted to show you the simplest, quickest way to create a simple screen like that. And because we can, let's also just rotate it so it looks right. And voila, you know, we could have made the material emissive. But this is a really quick and nice way. If you want to show a video in your scene, you can get it quickly. It's gonna you know, just play where you want it to be, and you can reuse it in multiple situations, and you know, just import it from your asset library. So yeah, with that, I'm just almost 3 minutes late for my 1 hour goal here. So thank you very much for sticking with me. I hope you've learned something interesting. I hope you're going to be able to work more efficiently with your custom assets in the future. And yeah, thanks for sticking with us. Have lots of success with Enscape. My name is Kai Burival, and stay safe. See you around. Goodbye.